If you're hearing my voice now, then you already know how it feels to watch your account disappear. Not slowly, not quietly, but all at once, in a way that leaves you staring at a number you can't believe is real. You know that sinking feeling in your chest, that mix of regret, disbelief, and shame, that moment where you whisper to yourself, "How did this happen again?" And if you've blown up more than one account, and you probably have, you've begun to realize something terrifying. It isn't the market that's destroying you. It's something inside you, something you can't quite name, yet keeps pulling you back into the same disaster, again and again. And I want to tell you something you may not be ready to hear, something I learned only after losing fortunes that took years to rebuild. You're not blowing up your account because you're unlucky. You're blowing it up because you're trapped in a psychological cycle you don't even see. A cycle I lived through, a cycle that ruined men in my era, just as brutally as it ruins traders in yours. A cycle that starts with one small decision, one tiny crack in discipline, one moment where your emotions speak louder than your rules, and ends with everything you've built burning to the ground. The worst part? It feels inevitable, as if something stronger than you is pulling the trigger, as if you're watching yourself make the mistake and can't stop it. But hear me now, very carefully, because what I'm about to tell you is the truth that saved me after the market broke me again and again. You are not doomed to repeat this cycle. You can break it. You can end it. You can become the trader who doesn't collapse under pressure, who doesn't chase losses, who doesn't destroy himself in the same place every time. But first, you must understand why the blow-up happens. Not the surface explanation, not the excuse you tell yourself afterward, but the real cause, the invisible one, hidden deep in your behavior, your impulses, and the part of your mind that takes control when fear enters the room. If you leave now, you will learn this truth, the way I learned it, through pain, through collapse, through years of repeating what could have been avoided with the right awareness. But if you stay, if you give me the next few minutes, I will show you the cycle that destroys traders from the inside, step by step, emotion by emotion, until you finally see yourself clearly for the first time. And once you see it, once you understand it, you will never blow up the same way again, because the power of the market means nothing to a trader who finally understands the power he never realized he had within himself. Let's begin. The hidden reason you keep blowing up accounts. If my words have reached you now, then you and I share something more dangerous than any chart pattern or market trend. We share the reality of loss, not the small losses that sting, but the catastrophic ones that erase months, sometimes years, of effort in a single moment. And if you're listening to me, I suspect you're no stranger to seeing your account burn itself to the ground. Not once, not twice, but again and again, as if the same invisible hand keeps dragging you back into the fire. And I want to tell you a truth. Most traders will spend an entire lifetime avoiding. You are not blowing up accounts because of the market. You are blowing them up because of yourself. I learned this painfully, brutally, in ways that carved themselves into my memory, with a sharpness that never faded. There were days when I watched my own fortune, built with patience, discipline, and intelligent timing, collapse because of a single moment, when emotion overpowered judgment. And that's what nobody tells you. Account blow-ups happen long before the final trade. The final trade is just the explosion. The real destruction begins weeks, even months earlier, in ways you don't notice at all. Blow-ups begin in the small compromises, in the tiny betrayals, in the quiet moments, when you know exactly what you should do, and you choose not to do it. Maybe you held a loser a little longer. Maybe you increased size because you were tired of making slow progress. Maybe you took a trade you didn't truly understand, just because you didn't want to miss out. Or maybe you broke your plan, thinking you would fix it later, when things felt clearer. I know these moments, because I lived them. I lived them until the market forced me to confront the most uncomfortable truth a trader can face. You are not losing because you lack knowledge. You are losing because you lack control. I remember a moment, early in my trading life, long before people thought of me as a legendary operator. I was young, ambitious, and convinced I had found the secret to the market. My account was growing rapidly. Every trade felt easier than the last. And then one morning, the tape started moving fast, violent in a way that stirred excitement. Instead of caution, I entered a position with size I had no business using. Why? Not because the setup was perfect, not because my plan approved it, but because I felt untouchable. That day, the market reminded me that nobody is untouchable. The loss was catastrophic, not because the trade was wrong, but because I was wrong. Long before the trade began, I ignored discipline, I ignored risk, I ignored myself, and that is exactly what happens to traders who blow up their accounts today. Account blow-ups are not accidents. They are not unlucky moments. They are not external events that catch you by surprise. Blow-ups are self-inflicted wounds, sharpened over weeks of emotional thinking and impulsive decisions. You blow up your account because you think you can get away with breaking your rules, because you think size can replace discipline, because you think the market will forgive your impatience. It won't. The market forgives nothing. It simply reflects who you are. If you are undisciplined, your account will show it. If you are emotional, your equity curve will reveal it. If you take on risk you cannot handle, the market will expose you in ways you wish it didn't. And here is the part most traders refuse to confront. Blowing up your account is not a trading problem. It's a psychological cycle, one that repeats until you either break it or it breaks you. A broken account always begins with a broken pattern, and a broken pattern always begins with a broken discipline. You don't blow up an account because you made one mistake. You blow it up because you made 100 micro mistakes that you pretended didn't matter, but they mattered. They always matter, and the market eventually collects its due. You're not here by accident. You're here because somewhere inside you, you know that your trading doesn't fail at the moment the account hits zero. It fails when you ignore the early signs that you're losing control. I am not telling you this to shame you. I am telling you this because I lived the same cycle on a scale you cannot imagine. I blew accounts, not because I didn't know the market, but because I didn't know myself. And if you stay with me, in the next part, I will show you the cycle you keep repeating without ever realizing it. The cycle that turns small mistakes into total destruction. It is a cycle I only escaped when I learned to confront the truth about my own behavior. And I will help you confront yours. The invisible cycle that destroys traders and why you can't escape it. If you've made it to this part, then you're finally ready to hear what most traders never understand until their account has already turned to dust. Because blowing up an account doesn't happen all at once. It happens in stages, predictable, repeatable, and deadly. It is a cycle, a loop, a psychological pattern that pulls you back in again and again until you either recognize it or it destroys every future you ever imagined having in the market. I lived this cycle more times than I care to admit, and I watched countless men in my era fall into the same trap. Smart men, experienced men, men who knew better, but could not stop themselves. And when I read the conditions of your era, the speed, the leverage, the noise, the stimulation, I know the cycle is even more vicious now than in my time. Let me take you into it. The cycle begins long before the blow-up. It begins in a quiet place inside your mind, a place where doubt and ambition fight for control of your decisions. You start with a loss, a small one, nothing dramatic, just enough to irritate you, just enough to disturb the plan you wrote for yourself, just enough to make you feel that you need to make it back. That is where the first fracture forms. And fractures, when ignored, become breaks. You take another trade, one slightly larger than usual. You justify it. You say the setup looks good. You tell yourself you're being decisive. You pretend you're in control, but you're not. You're already trying to fix something instead of trade something. Then comes the next stage. You begin losing patience. The market isn't giving you what you want when you want it, and so you begin bending your rules, ever so slightly, entering earlier, exiting later, forcing opportunities instead of waiting for them. Your method weakens, your logic distorts, your timing deteriorates, and then something dangerous happens. You catch a win, a lucky one, a win that validates the worst part of you, the part that believes rules are optional, the part that believes impulse can be skill, the part that believes size can replace discipline. This win becomes the spark that lights the fuse. Now you're confident again, but it's not real confidence. It's the most dangerous form, confidence built on emotion instead of structure. You start increasing size. You begin trading faster. You become attached to outcomes instead of process. And then it happens. The trade that turns the cycle. From psychological to catastrophic. A trade goes against you. Not by a lot, just enough to trigger discomfort. But instead of obeying your stop or accepting the loss, you hold. You widen the stop in your mind, not on the chart, in your mind. And because the market doesn't immediately punish you, you hold a little longer, a little longer, a little longer. And in those moments, you enter the most destructive phase of the cycle. You stop trading the market and start trading your emotions. The chart no longer matters. The setup no longer matters. Your plan no longer matters. All that matters is the feeling of not wanting to be wrong. This is the moment every blow-up begins. This is where men who know better destroy themselves. This is where I destroyed myself, more times than history remembers. When a trader reaches this point, he stops seeing the market objectively. He stops seeing himself objectively. He enters a state of denial, a powerful one, where every tick against him feels temporary, and every tick in his favor feels like redemption. But the market does not bend to your emotional narrative. It doesn't care that you're uncomfortable. It doesn't care that you really needed this to work. It doesn't care that you are desperate. Desperation is the clearest scent the market can smell, and it always attacks weakness. Now comes the moment every trader fears, yet always sees too late. The loss reaches a size where closing it feels impossible. It has grown too large, too painful, too humiliating for your ego to accept. You don't see the actual number anymore. You see the humiliation of being wrong. You see the discomfort of losing progress. You see the fear of starting over. You see the disappointment of failure. And so you freeze. You pray. You hope. You sit in a trade you should have closed an hour ago, a day ago, a week ago. And then the account blows up, not because of that final moment, but because every step before it pushed you closer to the edge. And here is a truth you must face. You never blow up from the last trade. You blow up from the person you became before you ever placed it, because the final trade is just the execution of a broken mindset. You blew up your account when you believed you needed to fix the loss. You blew it up when you broke your first rule. You blew it up when you convinced yourself that increasing size was justified. You blew it up when you let hope replace structure. You blew it up when you let denial delay action. You blew it up when your ego became louder than your discipline. The market didn't destroy you. It simply exposed you. And now you know the truth. You're not trapped in a financial loop. You're trapped in a psychological one. A loop that will repeat over and over and over again until you learn how to break it. And in the next part, I will show you exactly how to do that, because I did break the cycle, but only after I understood who I was at every step of it and who I had to become to escape it forever. If you are ready, I will show you the way out. How to break the cycle forever, the method I wrote for future traders. If you've come this far, then you've already done something most traders never do. You've looked at the truth, the real truth, of why you keep blowing up your account. You've seen the cycle. You've felt its grip. You've recognized the part of you that keeps destroying what you've built. Now it's time to learn how to break the cycle forever, not temporarily, not until the next losing streak, not until the next emotional swing, but permanently. I will give you the method I wrote, not for my generation, but for yours. A method born from my failures, my collapses, my recoveries, and the nights when I realized the market had never been my enemy. I had always been my own. Breaking the cycle begins with awareness, not the superficial kind, not the awareness that says, yes, I know I shouldn't overtrade, or yes, I know I shouldn't revenge trade. And I am talking about the deeper awareness, the awareness that looks at a losing behavior and sees not the decision, but the person behind the decision. The moment I understood that every bad trade was a reflection of the version of myself I allowed to appear, that was the moment the market began to soften around me. I learned that you cannot stop bad decisions by trying to force good ones. You stop them by transforming the identity that makes those bad decisions possible. A man who sees himself as undisciplined will act undisciplined. A man who sees himself as impatient will rush. A man who sees himself as unlucky will gamble. A man who sees himself as almost there will force trades. To close the gap, I changed my trading only when I changed my self-perception. But identity alone is not enough. Awareness is not enough. You must build boundaries, boundaries that are not suggestions, not guidelines, not hopes, but lines that cannot be crossed under any circumstance. I wrote these boundaries for myself late in my life, when I realized that one broken rule was never just one broken rule. It was an opening, a fracture, that expanded quietly until it shattered everything. So I made boundaries that protected me from my own worst impulses. Boundaries such as, I never increase size after a loss, and I never enter a trade I didn't plan. I never hold a loser hoping for salvation. I exit when my rule says exit, not when my emotions approve it. These boundaries did not make trading easier. They made me stronger. You must build the same. And then comes the hardest part, a part that breaks most traders, long before the market ever does. You must accept that leaving money on the table is not a failure. Missing a move is not a failure. Taking a small loss is not a failure. The real failure is abandoning your structure just to satisfy your emotions. The moment you accept that discipline is more valuable than gains, you become free, because then, for the first time, you stop chasing the market, and the market begins coming to you. I learned this truth. Decade is too late, but you can learn it now. Let me take you into the final stage of breaking the cycle. A trader cannot transform by controlling the market. A trader transforms by controlling the windows of vulnerability through which destruction enters. Ask yourself, when do I become weak? What triggers my recklessness? What emotions start the spiral? What moment in the cycle do I begin to lose myself? Some men become reckless after a big win, some after a painful loss, some during boredom, some during excitement, some when they feel they're falling behind, some when they finally feel close to something big. Your vulnerability is where the blow-up begins, and your discipline must be built around protecting that specific vulnerability. My vulnerability was confidence, not fear. Confidence. It made me careless and reckless and heavy-handed. So I built structures that forced me back into logic. Every time confidence began rising, your vulnerability may be different. It may be fear, impatience, comparison, greed, loneliness, or pressure from expectations no one knows you carry. Identify it, name it, confront it, because you cannot defeat what you refuse to face. Now let me give you the final truth, the truth I left for traders of the future. In these words, you do not break the blow-up cycle by becoming perfect. You break it by becoming consistent, Consistency is stronger than perfection. Consistency survives volatility. Consistency outlasts emotion. Consistency protects you when everything around you tries to push you back into the old cycle. Consistency is the antidote to destruction. Once you build a consistent identity, consistent rules, consistent boundaries, consistent thinking, the blow-up cycle cannot reach you anymore. The trader who survives is not the one who never fails. He is the one who stops failing. The same way, you must evolve. You must become a new version of yourself, a version the old cycle can no longer manipulate. If you do this, your days of blowing up accounts will become distant memories, lessons carved into your past, but with no power over your future. You will rise, not because the market becomes easier, it never does, but because you become stronger, stronger than fear, stronger than impulse, stronger than hope, stronger than the version of yourself that once destroyed everything you built. This is how you break the cycle, not with strategies, not with indicators, not with predictions, with identity, with boundaries, with discipline that cannot be shaken. You are no longer a trader trying to avoid blowing up. You are a trader, rebuilt from the inside out. And the market will never break a man who refuses to break himself.